Hello, my name is Nathan Wilner. I am Vice President of Government Affairs for the National Creditors Bar Association, and I'm really excited today to welcome Matt Ribe, correct?
That's right.
To talk about the organization that he's from and information about what National Creditors Bar is doing on behalf of its members. So with that, let's kick it off with Matt. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what is the NFCC?
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Matt Ribe. I'm the General Counsel with the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. We are a nonprofit membership association of 501c3 nonprofit credit counseling organizations. We have approximately 55 members all across the country, representing about 1,500 counselors in network, counseling about 500,000 folks a year.
So, like concisely, who are your members and what is your role within the association?
Sure. So our members are 501c3 nonprofit credit counseling organizations. So these are tax exempt agencies who have a consumer education and service mission. So fundamentally what they do is provide counseling and education to anybody and everybody who needs help. We have a focus especially on housing counseling and credit counseling. Credit counseling is typically where you're going to find somebody who is gotten into trouble with unsecured debt. They've got a balance anywhere between 7,500 to 20,000 and up across. A typical client will have just under 5 credit cards. They'll have a balance that they've carried across all those credit cards. And what our agencies provide is what's called a debt management plan. So a debt management plan takes all of a consumer's creditors into account. We have collaborative relationships with all of those creditors for a long time now. Our organization was actually set up in 1951, so been around doing the service for quite a long time. It's tried and true. So a typical plan for somebody will be a 60-month repayment schedule. They'll make one payment to the agency each month, and the agency disperses all of that money to the creditors included in the plan every month. So it's real time. They're paying down balances. They're getting concessions on interest rate. They're getting fees terminated, fees canceled. So it's constructive and a way to repay their debts.
So, it seems that in general, we're inundated by online and TV marketing from debt settlement companies. Are those your members? How can we tell the difference between a for-profit company and the traditional nonprofit CCCS? Seems like there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We can kind of clear that up. Yeah.
First things first, no, those are not our members. For-profit debt settlement companies tend to be for-profit and have quite a different sort of relationship with the consumer than we do. One way I think that you can easily spot the difference, besides from sort of the smell test, is a counseling agency. I think, first of all, I think it's rare that a counseling agency or counselor would be directly reaching out to one of your members. I think it's more likely that it's a settlement company that's doing that. But a settlement company, of course, enters into a power of attorney with their clients, right, with their customers, and they ask the customer to terminate all communications with their creditors and redirect all of those communications to the settlement company itself. So if you're interacting with somebody who doesn't have the client on the phone with them, is hiding the client from you, it is just sort of not necessarily being straightforward and transparent about engaging with the client, almost certainly not one of our members, right? In a case where we're trying to resolve, a counselor is trying to resolve a debt for a client that's not sort of established their debt management plan, which is established sort of routine operation with creditors, it'll almost always be a 3-party communication, and the client will be present for that.
So that kind of brings me to my next question. NCBA attorneys that do creditors' rights, do the debt collection, they receive correspondence and phone calls from many different types of companies. Many claim to represent the consumer. or even represent the consumer as a legal entity, as a law firm, or being the consumer's attorney, and then they're not. I mean, could be negligence, or it could be completely fraud. So the real question is, what kind of red flags should NCBA law firms, and law firms that do mostly debt collection, what should they be looking for red flags when they're getting these phone calls from people with varying degrees of transparency and credibility, quite frankly?
Yeah. Well, I think I mentioned a few of them. Really, if they're trying to sort of hide the ball with the client, debt settlement is sort of an emerging service across the country, and so how it's regulated and treated legally is different from state to state. And there are several states where settlement companies operate what's called a legal model to settlement, where they purport to at least have an attorney representing each client going through the experience. So it may in fact be legal, right? They may in fact be a legal representative for the consumer. And we could take issue perhaps with the scope, quality, or type of services or value proposition for the consumer. But in the states where it is legal, right, the settlement company may have a valid legal relationship and may be a valid representative for that consumer. So that's something to keep in mind for your members.
So we're getting close to the end of our recording for a coffee break. I know there's so much that we could talk about. First of all, this is fantastic that you're on this, and our members get to see the face of the responsible end of what we're talking about, because it is confusing, and it's unfair to paint the entire counseling world in a broad brush, but there has been a lot of people that have been taken advantage of. So, before we end this coffee break, what would you say, industry can do as a whole to make sure that not only are consumers being treated fairly, but the creditors are really dealing with good faith representatives of the consumer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it starts with knowing where the resources are. So I'd certainly encourage your members to check out nfcc.org. If there are consumers whom you come across who might need a little bit of financial education, counseling, handholding, that's a great resource to direct them to. In terms of creditors, one thing to emphasize as well is really the value proposition of engaging with credit counseling and debt management. It's great for consumers, and creditors love it because it's the best game in town for them too. Because a debt management plan takes all of the debts into account at once and right sizes people into affordable repayment plans, these plans perform very, very well, and they help consumers repay their debts in a responsible and sustainable way.
That's great. I know we have more to talk about. Hopefully you'll come back for another episode of NCBA Coffee Break. And thank you so much, Matt, for joining me today. So with that, we're going to conclude this cup of coffee and give everyone back their time. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.